Good evening, everyone. Two nights ago, we got word that someone in my wife's family died. And I wouldn't say it was exactly unexpected, but let's just say it was sooner than we'd imagined. I've been thinking of talking about this, but I guess I realize I don't know exactly what to say about it. For me in my practice, death has always been a pivotal piece of a motivator and a reminder. And I suppose my own father died before I was 30, just before I turned 30. So I've been aware, quite literally, of mortality and death and loss. But of course, for myself and probably for all of us, we're always aware of it. We hear about death all the time, but yet it also seems so far away. But to me, a death is a reminder of the finiteness of our existence. And I know for myself, I can realize how often, how much of the time I, and I'm making the extension to we, live as if we've got all the time in the world. And, you know, we have this phrase, life is short. And yet, life feels like it goes on and on and on and on. And time is like that. You know, in the absolute sense, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Each second is the same second. On and on. But in our lives, we live in a subjective world. Sometimes time feels very fast. Sometimes it feels very slow. We just crossed the midpoint of the year. Sometimes we say, boy, it's going so fast. It's already the summer. But think back to New Year's Day. Think how long ago that was. How much has happened. There's so much experience in our life. There's so much coming and going, and we're living in a time where everything is intensified. And we're all, I think, going a little bit crazy from the intensity of each passing day. Summer's here, we're already worrying about the wildfires to come. I talked to someone who lives in Chico, and up in Chico and in Paradise, they're still digging out from the devastation of the fires from last summer. I don't know if it was 2 or 3 summers before that, the fires in Santa Rosa, and all the people whose lives are turned upside down. And yet for probably most of us sitting in this room, we know about it and we care about it. And yeah, we have some concern about fires in our own neighborhood, but we just go forward and just go on. It's so easy to turn away, to lose our awareness, to busy ourselves with the things of mind, our desires, our toys, and really lose the connection with what's really happening right now. I'm aware that we often talk about how thinking clouds our view. But there's also a whole other layer of feeling and mood that can cloud our view and create a reality that we call it reality, but it's really a manufactured or a personal reality. But one person's joy is another person's sorrow. One person's good is another person's bad. So in Zen, we're training to be here, to be present, and to have access to something more real, even through the thoughts and the feelings, the moods, the toys and the desires. So we're training, we talk all the time about being awake, being alive, showing up, being here. Me as the speaker, being here, investing in this moment and opening up and revealing. And you as the listener, be here. Don't get lost in the judgment and the ideas about what I'm talking about. Let the teaching sink in and open yourself up to it. See yourself. Look inside. What am I? That's the attitude we bring to each moment. And that simple question, what am I? What is this? Helps us cut through the mood or the thoughts or the feelings or the desires to find out what's real right now and what can I do about it. When Zen Master Bon Soeng talked about the purpose of Zen, he said it's to understand my true self and to help this world. There's a song, boy, it's probably almost 30 years old now, by Laurie Anderson. Some of you may know who she is, some may not. She was a performance artist back in the 80s, and she's continued on. But she had this one song, and she has a Buddhist practice herself, and if you listen to the lyrics of her songs, you can hear the practice in it. And there's a chorus of one song, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's on the album Strange Angels. And it says, the chorus goes, I think it goes like this: we don't know where we come from, and we don't know who we are. Those are the first two lines. Those are the same, almost the same first two lines of our initial teaching poem of the human group. Coming empty-handed, going empty-handed, that is human. When you were born, where do you come from? When you die, where do you go? Nobody knows. We all have ideas. We all gravitate towards one particular view or another. But if we're honest, we don't know. That not knowing is our opening. If we can learn to be comfortable enough with not knowing, that opens us to be present to the moment that we're in. So the second two lines of the chorus say, so she says, we don't know where we come from, we don't know where we go. When you see a man who is broken, pick him up and carry him. When you see a woman who's broken, pick her up into your arms. That's the Bodhisattva way. Using this don't know to be here, to be alive in this moment. And as we are here and we connect, we see what needs to be done and do it. Now, it's easy to hear a teaching, and that teaching can help open us. The experience of our life, moment to moment to moment to moment, is the training ground that we work with to really open to this moment, to be present and alive just now, find our way forward to deal with the situation as we find it. So anybody's death causes a new ripple. The person who died was actually caretaking his wife who had an injury and who really can't take care of herself. So suddenly now, a whole other chapter opens up. As one thing ends, another thing begins. If we get too lost in the beginning and ending, we can't find ourselves. So I might have told this story a month or so ago, but I'm going to tell it again because it's connected. Many of you know I went in May, I went to Mexico to teach. And a couple of days before I went to Mexico, I took a walk in Mountain View Cemetery, which is up near Piedmont Avenue, and that's near my house. And I've been living in that neighborhood for close to 30 years, and I've been walking in that cemetery for that long. And Mountain View Cemetery is like a prime piece of Bay Area real estate. The way this cemetery came to be was that the rich families in San Francisco in the 1860s decided that when they died, they wanted to be able to see their beloved city. So they picked this piece of real estate where you have about the best view of San Francisco that you could imagine. It's just right there. And as you walk to the top of the cemetery, you get a view everywhere from beyond the Richmond Bridge to the north to beyond the San Mateo Bridge to the south. And it's this wide open vista, and the city is like right smack in the middle of it. So these rich people decided they wanted to be able to, or maybe they were, I'm making this part up, I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they wanted their descendants to come visit them and have a nice view to see that beloved city. And obviously since the 1860s, so much has changed. And yet you walk up there and boom, there you are. And if you can be present to it, you're alive. It's there. It's kind of an easy way to wake up because there's no real drama. It's a static view. There's no, if you want to get upset about buildings being too tall, you can start to complain about the skyline of San Francisco. This new Salesforce Tower has been built, and it's really prominent in the view. And it's interesting. Just this is all an aside, but most of the people I know hate that building. When you're in San Francisco, it's huge. It's probably pretty much looks like a penis standing way up into the sky. And it's a very bold statement. Now I'm just going to tell you my particular view. This is not right or wrong. But if you go up to Mountain View Cemetery and you look across the bay, that Salesforce Tower anchors it changed the whole look of the skyline. And it opened up a whole area to the south that as you look at it, it balances things with Coit Tower on one side. And then it opens up a whole expanse for the future to the south of it. So where most people I know hate the building, I enjoy it every time I see it. And I work in San Francisco, so I'm often going there. And this building shows up. You mark my words, if I were ambitious enough, I would hire a photographer to take pictures of the top of this building, thousands of different places around the Bay Area. This little top of the building shows up. There's going to be a coffee table book one day of all the different vistas and say, that you can find this building. Sometimes where my office is in San Francisco, I take a walk up the hill when I have a break and I go straight up. And then when you get to the top, suddenly that tower and all what's going on in downtown San Francisco right now just appears. As you cross the Bay Bridge, if you're looking, right when you get to Treasure Island, suddenly you can just see about this much of the building. So, like it, don't like it, that's your opinion. But that building is there. Boom. Deal with it. See it. Experience it. Use it to wake up. Our likes and our dislikes put us to sleep. But there's all of this world around us to help us wake up. So before I left to go to Mexico, I was walking in the cemetery, and You know the phrase, live your life as if this is the last year of your life? There are some groups people run around the area where you literally meet with people once a month, but you really try to imagine that it's your last time. That's a way of waking up. So I was walking, and this occurred to me, and I started looking at the cemetery. This is the last time. I've been walking, like I said, almost 30 years in this place. I can walk for 2 hours, meandering up and down the trails and the paths, and so I'm there quite a lot. I think of it as my backyard. And just for a second, I thought, okay, this is the last time. And it was actually quite painful. I took it seriously. It's like, oh, it's the last time. This may be the last time we sit here together. Oh, it's just another Wednesday night. We do this every Wednesday. That attitude puts us to sleep. Oh, this might be the last time. We wake up. This person in my family died. He's gone. It was hard. It was actually hard to stay with it because it was such a powerful image. So I decided in order to do the experiment, I had to change the image a little bit. So I thought, well, maybe I'm just moving away. Maybe I'm moving to Mexico. So I'm not dying, but this is still the last time. So I really looked. So I had my experience. I went off to Mexico and actually talked about it a little bit. I've been looking over some of the Dharma talks from the Mexico retreat, and this little story was in there. So I was in Mexico, let's say 2 weeks. I took a day or two off from work after I got back just to get myself back. So the day we flew in the evening, the next day I said, oh, I'll go take a walk into the cemetery. And I was walking in the cemetery and I thought, oh, this is like the first time I've ever seen it. And it was so interesting because it was the same point. The last time or the first time. They each have a different emotional resonance, but they're each as direct and alive. It's like I could see it as if it was the last time, so I'm looking at all of these. There's all these headstones and buildings and the land and the landscape and the way the trees are and the way the mountain, and they've been doing work in there and they've actually changed the top of the mountain. So all of these things I was noticing, and then coming back to it, in a sense, after dying. It was fresh, it was new, it was alive. It had a different emotional resonance. There was an excitement and a joy to the newness and the aliveness of the rebirth. And there was a melancholy and a sadness to the last time, to the death. So death and birth each have its own emotional resonance. But actually, they bring us back to the same point, which is right now. And that's where our Zen practice leads us. That's why we're sitting in this room. Sometimes it's hard to sit as if it's the last time or the first time. It's so easy to get caught up into the story, into perhaps the emotional resonance, that we then miss the present moment. But there's also a problem there, because sometimes we take this idea of Zen and practice to think, well, if I get rid of that emotional resonance, then I'll be able to see things as they are. So I know even for myself, when I first started practicing, there was a feeling if I could just get rid of that emotional resonance, then I wouldn't suffer. And there is some truth to that. The problem is that it's dead. It's not alive. In some ways, the emotional resonance of our lives make things actually become more alive. Let me see if I can come at this another way. After the presidential election in 2016, without getting political about it, let's just say I had feelings about it. And I remember talking to a close friend, and the close friend was saying, I figured this could happen. And he just shrugged his shoulders, and that was the end. And in that moment, I was suffering more than he was. So on one hand, it seemed like, if you don't care, it's no problem. But on the other hand, I had no desire to change places with that person. I didn't want what he had. He might have had less suffering, but it felt dead to me. So it's not only, yes, it is true that the emotional resonance can distract us. But it's not about getting rid of it. It's more about being able to hold it, see it for what it is, but also incorporate that. We're not trying to be like a rock or a stone. We're human. And all of our senses are what give us our uniqueness and also make our lives. So we often go too far. The emotional resonance can often suck us in and we get lost in it. We get depressed or we get anxious. We get melancholy, and that just shades and colors everything. The problem is, I think, that we get lost in it and we mistake it for a permanent state and we make it real. But on the other hand, it's important emotional connection to the human condition, and not only the human condition, but the world all around us. If you don't care about the trees, you wouldn't bother trying to save them. You might be happier not to care. So what if they all get cut down? We need the wood, right? We all use it, so what? But that's a mistake too. So it's not to get drowned in it and lost in it, but it's also not to get rid of it. It's to be completely human, ourselves, and alive. And this is hard work. There was a moment, maybe I'll finish with this story. Again, forgive me if I've spoken about this since I've been back from Mexico. But on one of the days, I think it was the second day of the retreat, there was some sound. And it was, for me, a very bad sound. It was like scraping on cement. It sounded like my view of it was they were finishing concrete and they were making this very unpleasant sound. And what I noticed as I was sitting in meditation is that the story in my mind got more and more complex. Not actually the story about the sound, but what I came to see later on is that the story that I made in my mind was an effort to block away the sound. So I got wrapped up in some drama in my mind. I was actually doing mathematical calculations, trying to figure something out. And when I looked at it later, I realized I was actually trying to avoid that by using the story in my mind to grab my attention. So why I'm telling this is I'm offering it as, I think as a, I don't know, I don't mean exactly as a lesson, maybe as a metaphor, an example. As you pay attention what's going on in your mind and your heart, in meditation practice, we're developing a bit of an observational stance. Watch what goes on in your mind. Pay attention to it. Don't think about it, but watch it. And as you're watching it, watch the way it sucks your energy. Watch the way you use the drama of your mind and your heart to protect yourself. And maybe just one more point about the sound. It was in the morning, and probably, maybe it was the next meditation period that I was giving the Dharma talk. So I opened with talking about the sound. And I started asking people, what did you hear? And the stories were amazing. Where I heard grating metal on concrete, somebody else heard somebody crying. Somebody thought it was somebody in the retreat that was really struggling with something. So where my sound was a bad sound, so it created one result, this person heard this cry of suffering, and what she came up with was deep compassion. So remember, we don't know what we're hearing. Not only do we not know who we are, but we don't know who others are. We make so many assumptions, but there's a backstory. And when you finally hear the backstory, it changes your judgments and ideas about people. So, remembering that we don't know is valuable almost every minute of every day. If we can really live with not knowing, it's a doorway into the present moment. If we can really get how we don't know where we came from, and we don't know where we're going, and we barely know how we got here after we were born anyway. We have a story that we tell, but the story isn't true. It's just the one we've made up. So the more we're willing to trust that we don't know, the more we're able to be present. And maybe one last thing that I should throw in, as we sit with our meditation practice, our instruction is very simple and very clear. Bring your breath to your lower abdomen. Slowly breathing in, slowly breathing out. Calm your body, but you're also developing some energy and ability to be in your lower abdomen. Often we think, some of us, our home is up in our heads. For others of us, our home is in our hearts. So if our home is in our head, we gravitate or we lean towards thinking and analysis. And we use that thinking and analysis to try our best to understand what we really don't understand. Others of us, our home is in our hearts. And then we lead with emotion. But it's also a kind of trap of being controlled by emotion rather than being able to use the emotion. So in the same way, where I'm talking about to be able, rather than be trapped into the emotion, to be able to use the emotion to be able to see clearly. The same is true for our thinking. We can use our thinking to develop a very complicated and closed-ended story so that we don't have to deal with what's bothering us. Or we can use our thinking to observe and to note and to open. If we can find our home in our lower abdomen, in our center, in our tangen, that unifies all of it. Then we can use the thoughts, use the emotional resonance to help us see more clearly, to connect with the situation as it is, and to open our own hearts to picking someone up and helping them. to offering the assistance that's needed in the precise moment that you're in. That's called the Bodhisattva way. That's how our Zen practice manifests in our lives and helps the world around us. If we can keep our focus on helping the world around us, it offers us a direction to be present and alive and to show up.